It's now live on YouTube. Now I can ask you, first of all, thank you again to come back on the show. It was a pleasure speaking to you last time. It's always a pleasure. And from here onwards, now we can have the conversation which I was not having before before putting it on live. So what is the situation now with the bushfire and all?
Well, it's really interesting because it's quite warm during the day, in the high 20s, low 30s. But the campfire ban has been rescinded, which is a bit alarming because it's very, very dry. We've had very little rain. Most of the fires are now still burning, but in controlled burn situations. Um, over 200 plus fires were burning at any given time. But the smoke has certainly lessened, which is a blessing as well. And people are now faced with the reality of seeing what comes of their insurance if they have any. Many people don't choose to carry home insurance, and what various levels of government will contribute as people rebuild their homes and their businesses.
Let me just also, I mean, you can tell them basically you're in Falkland, British Columbia, and a lot of people would not know about these fires. So if you just want to tell us what really happened and when you had to evacuate and all those things, that was serious stuff.
Yes, it was serious stuff. And Falkland is about 500 kilometers northeast of Vancouver, a major center on the west coast of Canada, just north of the American border. And the entire west coast, not just British Columbia, but all down into the United States, has suffered from drought and fire for numerous years now. And this season, we began with what they call a heat dome. I did record a temperature of 47 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple of days. When it cooled down to 32, I felt cold. But those of you who live in warmer climes, perhaps that doesn't mean too much to you. But nonetheless, 47 is too hot for human health. And we had the largest number of deaths ever in British Columbia as a result of heat. And so it's been a summer of collected catastrophes, building, of course, on the continued pandemic. We're in a significant fourth wave here, as are many other parts of the world. So it's not unique to, this is a global community, and these kinds of fires were also going on in Greece, and floods were going on in Europe, and we're in a pretty dire situation here. And so it was, it's something that I've lived with here in British Columbia for many, many years now. I can recall several summers going back easily 10, maybe 15 years of waking up with smoke in the air, ash on my car, and wondering how close the fires were going to come to where I live.
So the signs were there. The signs were all there. It's just that when it reaches a stage like this, then the conversations start, lots more conversations start, which should have started, like you said, when you got the indication.
Yes, I mean, climate change has been a well-known scientific fact for probably over 30 years, and we continue to ignore it to everyone's detriment. And people like to point fingers and blame, but it really, we have to have the conversation now around how we're going to work together collectively.
I think we have to, I think we just have to ask ourselves, who are those people who will get affected, and then things will happen? Whose houses need to be burned down before things reach a stage when action is taken?
Well, but sadly, Vikram, even that, we know also that the people who are most affected are those who are already marginalized, those who have limited resources to make the changes and adapt. It's not those people. I mean, sure, some of those people are in denial that climate change is a thing, but where the real change needs to happen is at the top with the wealthy 1% or 10% or whatever you want to call it. And the rest of us are the ones who have to push for that change to occur.
That's
How
exactly
was
what I'm
that?
saying. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm
Yeah.
saying. That who are those one, not even 1%. 1% is too large a population. It is maybe 0.01% who, when they get affected, maybe things will happen. But I don't, I mean, these are discussions which
Yeah.
will keep happening. But the important thing is that has evolution of Kathy Potter taken place in this time that you've gone through this? Some more, of course, evolution has happened, but we'll have to know
Of
what
course.
changes
Of
took
course.
place.
I don't know. Maybe my hair's grayer. Um, uh, I guess, it's interesting question, Vikram, because I guess for me, what I continue to ask myself is how do I engage with people who, um, disagree with my perspective on climate change or who have opinions that I think are, ultimately even a detriment to themselves or and certainly a detriment to our broader society. How do I engage with those people? And I think I study the words and the brilliant writing of our friend and colleague Ken Cloak, and seek to find the appropriate kinds of questions to ask. um, there was a big rally in locally here. We're in the middle of a political campaign at the moment, a campaign in the middle of a pandemic, and people are calling for freedom. And I guess the question that comes to mind when I hear that is, what does freedom mean to you? What are you actually calling for? Are you calling from freedom from paying taxes? Because if that's the case, then I'm not sure in 5 years how you're going to get to work if we've got no money to repair the roads, or if we've got no money to try to provide clean drinking water. Also knowing that there's so many Indigenous in Canada that don't have clean drinking water. Um, it, it's
But what is
you
this one
know
about? I mean, I would not know about this one, about the call for freedom. The who are these
well,
people?
I think that there's a global trend in populist style governments where they promise things that people in many cases want to hear. We're going to reduce your taxes. We're going to give you freedom, but there's no explanation of what that really means. And we look at what happened in Poland, in Turkey, in France, in the United States of America, in countries around the world that have elected populist governments, and sadly they are unable or unwilling to fulfill those promises. In Trump's case, he told you he was going to make America great again. But what did that really mean? What that really meant was protecting the capitalist, genocidal, racist dogma that made them such a powerful country in the world. Um, so it they're complicated questions, and I'm just one little mind struggling with these questions, I guess.
No, we need people to think about it, talk about it, at least talk to me about it, because I always keep saying that I live in a bubble. I stay away from what is happening around. I don't watch the news because there is so much negativity which spreads. But what about all the positive things which are happening? Let one person just look at that. There are lots more who are looking at all that negativity. Let them question it, dissect it, whatever. Have conversations on that. But let me have these conversations with you. I would rather do that. But
Well, good for you, and it's good to have somebody to sort of express my rant and rave to.
definitely. But the only thing is that, look, we have to at this stage go back to that trip in Europe. We have to start from there. I think that day you were just a little like you were a little rushed, I think, on time. So I hope you've kept time today.
Yes, I have time today.
Perfect.
I'm out in the camper. This was our escape vehicle during the fires. So we're slowly bringing things back into the house, but I'm out here in the camper so that everyone in the house can stay asleep.
Oh, okay, then it's okay. Because I think last time there was some, I think you had to move your laptop from here to there. So now we're okay. Now we're stable.
Yep,
But,
we're
but
stable.
there was no damage, but no damage to house or property or anything.
No, no, other than, significant smoke and, potentially damage to your health when you're breathing in smoke day in and day out for easily 2 months
Wow.
this past summer. It's hard when you wake up and you think, oh, has somebody, is burning down my front porch or what's going on? We were lucky. We were evacuated. We had to leave our home and go somewhere else. And, even when we were at, probably 60 kilometers from our home in a place that was considered safe, I came out one night and the car was literally covered in ash, not just fine ash, but chunks of ash that were this big. I picked up something that looked like a piece of moss from a tree, a black ember about that long, and it was still warm.
Wow.
And these were embers that were blowing 50, 60, 100 kilometers from the source of the main fire. And we did. The sky became a dark orange, blood red orange, and you are on edge, wondering, where's the fire going to come next? Are we safe? If we're not safe here, where do we go? When the whole province is burning, and then the fires mitigated and we were allowed to come back home, and I went down to the Vancouver area to visit my family. And then there was another evacuation alert, and I was trying to see if I could get home, and every single road north to my home here in Falkland was closed. It was closed due to fire. So, this is just a very small expression of the impact of climate change on small local communities. The town of Lytton made it into the global news. They suffered from a heat dome with the highest temperatures on record. And then in 15 minutes, the entire town burnt down. And
Wow.
it's a town that's bigger than the town that I live in right now. People were lucky to get out with their lives, let alone anything of a precious nature. So, this is the reality. And, it's interesting. You asked me to go back to Europe and talk about, when I was 10 and went to live with my family in Germany. And so I was exposed to, at an early age, to a lot of the inequities in the world. I can remember, I think I spoke last time about going through the Panama Canal and children running after me asking for money. And it's like, why are they asking me for money? I didn't understand. And then, of course, camping next to the Berlin Wall and seeing, why would you put a wall in the middle of a country, in the middle of a city? It didn't make any sense. Still doesn't.
Yeah. I know that is one aspect. Of course, now you're talking about maybe Panama Canal, but what about, I keep saying that the UN building is there in New York, and right there, if you have homeless people right next to it, I mean, these are right in front of you. You can't do anything about it. For what reason? Or how have we, this whole economy and how way the money functions, and the money that we've created, the concept that we've created, has gone to the extent that there is money actually in terms of paper somewhere in that city, but that paper cannot be transferred here for some reason, because we've created this whole global economy, as we call it. So I think maybe we'll have to relook that also. I mean, after climate change or before climate change, I don't know, but we have to relook that.
Well, but I think it's a part of climate change, Vikram. I think, when we look at the, as you say, the global economic system, I think we have to be realistic to recognize that it's based on keeping money in the pockets of the wealthy and in the pockets of the powerful, and that we know, if we study history, and it wasn't anything I was particularly interested in studying until recently, but if we look at history, we know that the entire United States economy was built on slavery and genocide of indigenous peoples, and the enslavement of Black and brown bodies, and that continues today. And the same is true in Africa. It was overtaken and the resources extracted to fill the pockets of the rich and powerful in Europe, and now it's being further decimated by the rich and powerful in China, who are doing exactly the same thing. The pattern of power over and wealth extraction continues. It's the you go back to the Dark Ages, and we talked about rape and pillage as though it were a thing of the past, and it isn't.
Yeah. But the interesting thing, okay, I mean, I'm just moving away from the aspect of income disparity. I'm just moving into dispute resolution. This symposium that I'm doing, one interesting thing that is coming up in that also is colonization actually affected collaborative dispute resolution in countries. It totally changed the way they were resolving the disputes. Even indigenous communities in Canada, Martha was there. She had her presentation. I mean, I'm saying that colonization has affected a lot of things. It's you talking about that, and I'm talking about dispute resolution. So, how do we go back and undo what has happened? When do we do it? I think that is really the question.
Well, yes, I think it is the question, and I think I spoke last time about the fact that Indigenous communities and other, not just in North America, but Indigenous communities around the world have always had, methods for dispute resolution, and that Leanne Bedasamoke Simpson talks about in her book, As We Have Always Done. I think that's the title. I apologize if I've gotten it wrong, but she talks about the fact that the Anishinaabe people were greedy and were taking too many resources from the land, and so the Hoof clan that they had relied on for food left, and they began to starve, and so they brought in a mediator to help with the negotiations between the Hoof clan and the Anishinaabe people, so that they could live in a more mutually beneficial, to use a alternative dispute resolution term, in mutually beneficial lives. So these alternative forms have been around for a long time. In the Buddhist tradition, there's a tradition of the community coming to sit in a circle around those who are in conflict, and to support both of them, probably in a way that Ken would define as omnipartial, biased in the favor of all parties, and to support them to resolve their dispute. The history, as far as I'm aware, in North America is that, people in the legal judicial profession were aware of alternative dispute resolution, mediation, and the courts were full, and so they began to speak more openly and to bring mediation into that area of where dispute resolution was needed as a process. Part of me feels that I understand the need for a justice system, but I also feel that in some ways it's being co-opted to support our Western capitalist system. And certainly when I look at Indigenous communities fighting for their rights and having to pay legal fees to support their right in a system that's not designed by them or for them, I question whether that is just.
Yeah. But Kathy, these are the things that you had to speak about in the symposium that I've organized. This is exactly what we need. So I think you have to be a speaker there now that you're back home. So
Okay.
let's fix up a time, and then please, it's up till the end of September, so we can fix a time. That's
Sure.
not a problem, because I think these are very important things to be put out there. I mean, this is what the whole symposium was all about and is about, to be able
Yes,
to.
and I've just gotten home.
I know. No, we have time. We have some time. We have some time.
I've got some time, and I'm also preparing for the the climate change talks in Glasgow. I do have a badge to attend on behalf of Mediators Beyond Borders International, so that'll be interesting.
Be good. Because I think these are things, people are talking about it, but we need lots of voices out there talking about this, because your experiences in that whole sphere will be different, and what you bring out, and people have to be, because the whole idea is that the videos are out there, we keep circulating them, it reaches people. Because for me, look, finally I want to reach down to the people. Forget the people who put the policy makers and everything. There are lots of people doing that. but and but on the other end, go down, like I said, to the grassroots and take that message there that this is something that is not alien to you. Start bringing it back. If it has to be brought back, how is it to be brought back? So sending people out into villages to start with, and into communities and cities and towns. It's a process. It's not going to happen in a day. It's going to take its time, but this is just a
Yeah.
conversation that I've started. I mean, I'm sure that
Oh,
I'm sure people must be doing it. For me, this is my conversation. Other people have to do theirs, so it just has
yeah.
to go
No,
on.
it's great, and and I think that's one of the reasons why I belong to MBBI is because they are having those kinds of grassroots conversations
Yeah.
with others like yourself and Greg Walker, for example, and the need for capacity building. I mean, it all comes back to that. I think at the end of the day, and how do we give people the critical thinking skills to differentiate between a reasonable argument and a bad argument?
But when you spoke about MBBI, for me, the institutions and what they're doing is a separate area altogether, which I don't touch. What I did was let me put myself out as an individual because I want more people to come in. I keep saying that I have this create this whole layer of 1,000 people I can reach out to, and they reach out to 1,000 people who have the mediator mindset. We have 1 million people in this whole network. It's not, but I am, it's like mediator Vikram and everyone is part of that umbrella or something. Nothing like that. Everyone does their thing on an individual basis. You can do lots as an individual. If I
Of
put up
course.
a symposium with more than, now it's going to be more than 80 people from almost about 40 countries, I can do it on my own. So why can't those people that I bring into this, why can't they do that? So if I can have conversations with so many, imagine how many more conversations will happen. And because there's so many people to reach out to, that there is enough work to be done. And I'm saying let institutions do what they're doing, let individuals do what they're doing, and the court system, the way it is in countries which is going to finish off mediation, how soon can we undo that aspect of it also needs to be looked at. That everyone keeps talking about that the mediation came into the country through the court system and all, but today as I see it, it hasn't worked because I keep talking about in the symposium that 100 million cases are filed in the US every year. If for 40 years you have been doing mediation and you have mediators out there, why are people not going to mediators? Why are they going to lawyers who take them to court and from there take them to mediators? So there's some fundamental issue somewhere. So maybe you have to start questioning that. There is one particular mediator in the US who started questioning it. Of course, everyone says it's a little controversial because before this, he was talking about how confidentiality is a myth in the US, which is true. When he puts it out legally, it is a myth. So he's put in, now he's at least talking about this, and I hope that he takes it around. That the way the court system has actually kind of finishing the profession and a lot of things there. I mean, of course, I've only seen that 1 15-minute clip of his, which I made sense to me because I wanted to make sense to me because I keep talking about that. But I'm just saying that that part of it is also to be looked at because I
Oh, of
can't
course.
understand. I can't understand that in a country where you have all these mediators. I mean, a country like ours, it's just about starting here in terms of only the court system is the only place that is really there is activity. Person like me is only a mediator. I mean, in the whole world I don't find people like that. So why is it
Mm,
that, where did we go wrong? I
yes.
mean, so I'm
Yeah.
saying we have to start looking at that also, and individuals should be out there. People, why did I do this? Evolution of a Mediator, the other show that I do in Conversation with a Beautiful Mind. I just want these people should know mediators as the people they are, the wonderful people they are, the special people
Mm.
they are. Some people, I don't think someone told me I can't put a face to a mediator because I've never met one. Now I've met you, now I can put a face to a mediator. So that's how we have to put it out. We have to put individuals out, and individuals have to go out, put other individuals out, and then you create the network. There is so much work out there. There's so much work out there, but if
Oh,
for some
yes.
reason we haven't taken it properly. I mean, this is my way of going about it. Everyone will have their way, but I think maybe I'm taking into an area where I have to go to Europe and take you from the Europe trip here, but I've got you stuck in this part of the world. So please
Well,
tell us. Yeah, yeah,
it's a really important question, and it's one that I've been asking for quite a number of years as a mediator, and I'm not legally trained, and when I was doing the mediation training at an organization here in British Columbia, the question that kept coming up for me was that the lawyers who were studying alongside with me were trained in being adversarial, in fighting the fight for the parties or the party that they represented.
Yeah.
And mediation is not about the fight. Mediation is about listening, is about asking questions, and is about helping the parties to understand how and why they're in conflict, and how and why they might get themselves out of conflict and transform their relationship. And so the core, the essence of mediation for me is very, very different from the essence of the justice system. And the challenge is that again, in my opinion, lawyers kind of saw mediation coming in, and let's use the word railroading for now, coming into their profession, into their domain. And so lawyers began to flock to the mediation profession and become mediators. But it's like playing for both teams. You got a sock for one football team on one foot and a sock for the other football team on the other foot, and you're trying to juggle the ball, and it's just not working because you're always in conflict yourself.
Because I'm telling you, the fact that it became popular in the US, according to me, is only because the lawyers could take advantage of or make money out of it, because they were representing clients in those mediations and they were making money out of that. So it didn't matter to them. So that is why it took up. But in the symposium, Michael Lang was there, and he's a lawyer who's a mediator, and he doesn't like the way it's developed there. It's become transactional. He says it should be interactional. So he's spoken about go through his session. And it's a nice. He's a nice person, and his session was very nice. So that, and then you have Mary, who's not a lawyer, who's spoken about the same issues, that it's about deal making, and it's become that kind of a profession. So that part of it. So there is, things that have to change in the US itself, and we countries all over the world are picking up that model, thinking that it worked there. They've been doing it for so many years. But go inside it, see is it really working in the way we want it to work. If people do not go, it's very clear to me, if people do not go in so many years having mediators all over the country, if they do not go to the mediators first, and they still want to go to the courts, there is some fundamental issue in the way it's developed. That's the way I look at it.
Because we live in a competitive society, and we're trained from an early age in our education system to compete, to come out on top. And so why would you go to mediation where you have to do the hard work of taking responsibility for your part in the conflict, when you can go to the legal justice system and keep your fingers crossed and hope that you beat the other guy and that you win? That's the thinking that we're enculturated in. So that's part of the challenge. How do we become a collaborative society, a society that values the collective? And we're not there. I watch in elementary schools as they try to introduce the idea of collaboration into the classroom, at the same time having children compete for the best grade and the highest mark. It's like, come on, folks, you're messing with my mind.
Exactly. But the way, that's why the way I'm going about it is step by step. The symposium is to highlight that it is part of our culture. Next step is for people, like I said, again, for me, grassroots is where it starts. Create that culture of mediation. So it's something that, like schools and all, I do have an issue with this peer mediation, the way it's developed, because I keep talking about that also, that I want these children to actually be exposed to only the mediation part of it. The conflict management part of it and the nice training on non-violent communication, of course, is a different area. Yes, it is nice. You must do that. I'm not saying that children should not be told to be nice people. Very nice. They should be told. But what about dispute resolution? They should actually see that dispute resolution happening. And these are children who will do it themselves. They have the ability. They are mediators. If you ask them, they can train you. They give you all the entire theory that you might learn in any training course. So they know everything. They're doing it. We just have to bring it out. And from those children who have that natural ability, to let that grow as a profession for those people. Maybe I'm saying maybe in the US, anywhere else, maybe the right people are not doing it. If the user experience was good in the last 40 years, if the user experience was good, it should have spread like wildfire. I should not use the word. Okay, wildfire is not a good word to use right now. It should have spread.
Thank God.
Yes, exactly. It should have
Yes, and
spread so much.
wildfires do spread. So,
Exactly.
so
The user
well,
experience. Yeah.
yes, yes, I agree. And I ran an alternative elementary school here in Canada for about 5 years, and it was young children, so sort of ages 4 to 8, I think. I can't remember. It's been a while ago. And I did support them to learn how to negotiate fairly with the other children, and gave them the skills to the extent that I could do that to begin to be effective negotiators, and even ultimately, in some instances, effective mediators. Um, it's a complex field of human interaction. You need negotiation skills, you need collaboration skills, you need potentially mediation skills, you need listening skills, you need thinking skills. I mean, I guess the question comes down to me when I listen to that is what is it in our education system that needs to change so that children have the ability to grow up with these various skills, to become philosophers and mediators, and rather than little machines and competitors, and losing their ability to be creative and innovative thinkers.
Well, look, I'm looking at it again from the aspect of a person of authority sitting there also. The teachers and the head of these schools and institutions actually maybe do not want children to be handling these themselves, because I was speaking to last week. I had this conversation with someone from Africa. In conversation with a beautiful mind. So his son was there. So I like to talk to children about this, and I asked them. So I said, is there someone who in your school who helps you resolve the dispute? Would you do it? What is the situation? He says, no, I will not, because I'm very scared of the teacher. I won't help some friends who are fighting. So if that kind of an authority figure is sitting there, and if you are helping someone to resolve your dispute as an issue for that person, then look at this little child saying it, and this is on video, so you can always watch it. It's there. So
Yeah,
imagine if that's the kind of fear in a person's mind to even talk to the friend, talk to a person in the school. So we have to look at those aspects also. That are they free enough to be able to do that? So it's nice, of course, that the whole concept is discussed, but when it comes down to the grassroots again, how is it perceived by the people in authority, which is, I'm saying, in schools or in communities or nationally? I mean, how are they
sure.
looking at people doing it? So do they want to lose control? No, obviously not.
No, they don't. Of course. I mean, the whole system is built on control, getting control, gaining power, and keeping it. Excuse me. And again, we perpetuate this hierarchical system in our families before they go to school, in schools, in the workplace. Our whole society is a system of power over and power and control, and we don't spend much time thinking about or even considering the value of autonomous thinking, the value of taking responsibility for our actions, the value of a curious mind, an inquiry into, stopping and asking ourselves, why do I dislike that person? Why am I reacting to what they're saying? We don't go inside and say, what is it that's causing this reaction in me? I think that's, the reflexive practice is one of the things that we could do well to um, nurture.
But the other thing on this person of authority and that kind of aspect, I still again want to go to the colonial aspect of divide and
Mm.
rule. So you had to divide people. Now you don't want them to get together, because if they get together and they can resolve the disputes themselves, suddenly they're all living in harmony with each other. Where do I fit in? How do I create an issue there? So there is a lot. There's lots more. I mean, I'm saying it like this, but actually this is a serious issue that people do not want people to get together. So be it dispute
No.
resolution or any other social problem solving or anything, there needs to be someone wants to, it's like we have this story, I'm sure you have the story also of the cats and the monkey, and they have something to share, and the monkey breaks the whole thing and then says, no, no, this is not equal, takes some part of it, and then no, this is also not equal, and finally eats the whole thing up. So so that's the kind of dispute resolution which happens.
Yes, it is. It is. It is. Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we have to go to Europe now, straight there. That trip, look, that trip is important because that is
Of
a
course it
very
is.
important part of what you, as a person, how you grew and what happened. So I think you have
Mhm.
to take us very slowly through that.
Okay. Well, let's see. Can you tell me where I was at? Because I can't
But
remember.
basically, you were hitchhiking through Europe, and you had
Oh, the second trip to Europe.
yeah,
Okay.
you were there, yeah.
Second trip to
First
Europe.
one, your first one you spoke about, what you were
Did I?
exposed to, and that aspect of, like you
Okay.
said about the Germany aspect of it, and that was something that you saw, and the disparity and all that aspect of it. But then we were on this trip now, and where somewhere you mentioned about the Swiss boarding school and how you had to be rescued. I mean, look, this is not going to happen in just one sentence, and that's it. What happened, what you went through. It is a slow process.
It is. Well, and I think it's interesting because it goes back to this power and control and my unwillingness in some ways to be controlled. um, and so I left the Swiss boarding school and I went to live in Italy. My father was on sabbatical in Bologna, and so I had to learn a little Italian to get by. And I was living a pretty privileged life. I went skiing and got to
I think
see
Kathy,
different aspects of Europe.
slowly you gone too fast. Right now we don't even know what happened to the boarding school. You've already moved on, and
Oh, okay. I thought I talked
no,
about the boarding school
no,
last time.
you didn't speak about the trip. I wanting you to come out more about the trip because you had some interesting experiences there, and then boarding school, that was the
Okay.
other part of it. Nothing you spoke about. I kept trying, I think but then we went into this discussion about what was happening in Canada with the indigenous
Okay.
communities and all that,
All
so
right.
the
Okay.
conversation didn't go any further.
I'll try to walk you through it
Yes,
to the
walk
extent that I can
slow
remember.
steps.
So, so when I was 18, I had finished 1 year of university, and a friend and I went to Europe. We flew to California and spent the night with my grandparents in Los Angeles, and then went to the airport and got on a plane and flew for hours and hours and landed in Frankfurt in Germany and stayed with some family friends of Vivian. And then we started to hitchhike through Europe. So we hitchhiked north. I can remember eating yogurt for the first time. What is this strange stuff? Oh, it's quite yummy.
Seriously.
Um, we hitchhiked all the way up. We wanted to go to Scandinavia, so we hitchhiked. At one point, we got a ride in a big, brand new, fancy truck with two Norwegian who introduced us to the idea that there was a strong connection between Scotland and Sweden, and they shared many words that were the same, like flit and hoose. Um,
Mhm.
and then we were staying in a campground that was at the top of this mountain in Oslo, I guess, and it was a very narrow road, and this big, huge truck drove us all the way up to the top of the hill to the campground.
And you didn't
Um,
think that's going to happen. So how is
we
it going
didn't
to
think
happen?
that was going to happen.
No, no, but how did the trip start? Was there a plan? I mean, a proper,
Oh yeah, we planned that after first year we were going to go to Europe together, and that
no
was about the
specifics.
extent of the
Okay,
plan.
okay.
Well, we both had made arrangements to have work in a Swiss boarding school before we left. So the goal was to hitchhike around Europe and then head to the boarding school to work for a year. And I had family connections to a boarding school, and Vivian found her own boarding school, work at, and so that was the plan. Kind of changed as we went
But
along.
what is it? There is something about a trip to Europe, which is part of everyone's life. They always have to, we have to do it. But what is it about it? Why did you people plan that?
Well, I think that, in some ways you didn't think too much about it. It was kind of a given that that's what you were going to do. And I guess, Vivian and I both grew up in academic families where the concept of a sabbatical, a year off to learn and explore the world, and that probably without really thinking about it or being aware of it, we were going to do that. We'd been in school for at least 7 years. We were ready for a sabbatical. Um, and encouraged by our parents world to gain new perspectives from different cultures, and to come back then and to pursue the rest of our university careers. So,
Yeah, because
but
there's this whole Southeast Asia trips. Everyone wants to do a Southeast Asia trip, a Europe trip. But what about South America? Has South America been left out of these trips? Because you people are still closer to it. We are very far away from South America. But what about there? I mean, were there plans at that time or now? Do people talk about it? Because
I think that there were certainly people that I knew who traveled to the south, who traveled to Africa, who traveled to Australia, New Zealand, South America for sure. But keep in mind that here we are in Western Canada, in a Western colonial capitalist system. You don't want your up and coming young people to go off and get some activist ideas from from Argentina or something like that. So I'm not saying that that's the case, but I could well imagine it to be. You're not going to Cuba, honey. There you go.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, so Europe it is. It's a good compromise. She won't get too many ideas. And the culture will kind of be the same. She won't will be not totally out of the way. Maybe something like that.
Exactly. And we'd studied Romance languages in high school. We live in a supposedly bilingual country, so we spoke a modicum of French. We spoke a modicum of German. We could get by in Western Europe, and Spanish wasn't a language that was offered. So, we were being unwittingly directed it to continue the culture in which we were a part.
Yeah, but the good part about Europe is that at least they've been able to retain whatever. I mean, architecturally, of course, they've got those old towns and everything. It's a nice thing to do to visit those. And otherwise, also, I think language is also something which has been retained in most countries. So I think that is a
Mm-hmm,
good thing they've done.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
so basically, now we've reached some mountain in Oslo. We will landed up there, and there's a campsite. It's a campsite, is it?
Yeah, we camped. We had a little camouflage tent, I think, and we hitchhiked all the way. We took the train, I think, I can't remember, to Bergen or something. I parts of the trip I don't remember, but we took the train and hitchhiked up all the way to a little town called Skiboten on the north coast of Norway. And the tide goes way out, so we went swimming in the Arctic Ocean because the water was actually warm. And
But you have to at the same time keep telling us how beautiful it was, because pictures you're not showing us, which
I don't have any pictures of that time. It was
you have to keep telling us how beautiful it is.
It was beautiful, but the things that I remember are more the interactions with people that we had, people who were very kind and picked us up and said, "Oh, here you have to eat these shrimp." I think they were dried little shrimp. The people who were worried, who picked us up and what are you two young women doing out here hitchhiking in the middle of nowhere? And then the men who picked us up and had other intentions that we had to extricate ourselves from.
But were you were old enough to understand that, or
Oh, yes.
Okay, good, good. Okay, but that's what your parents were worried about, whether you're
Uh,
old enough to understand that or not.
yeah, I think so. Um, so we hitchhiked all the way up to the north there, and then we hitchhiked down through Finland. We were picked up by a woman biologist and driven basically all the way through Finland. There's a language we didn't speak. Interesting to hear the mayor of Helsinki saying that English should be the official language of Helsinki to attract people to work there now. But
No, but at the same time, you're not going to rush like that. These interactions that you had with people, the kind of conversations you had or whatever. Tell us about it. What were people thinking like at that time? Because that's the interesting thing, that because those things are.
well, I mean, I don't know that I was necessarily interested in what people were thinking.
But, it was coming through. It was coming through in their conversations.
It was, it's just little snippets of things. You have to remember this was 50 years ago.
I know. That's why we're taking our time. That's why it's no problem.
But I can remember having a little language book on the train and sitting on the train and practicing I think it was Danish or Swedish or something. And so I asked very carefully this gentleman sitting beside us on the train, snakker de engelsk? And he answered something, blah, 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 blah. And I went, oh, and he said, in English, if you wanted to ask me if I spoke English, perhaps it would have been better to ask me in English.
But you're not going to talk about this fact that it's 50 years back. Ken has taken us through his life. You do imagine if he's 80 years old. So he's gone back 80 years and he's given us quite a good description about things. So it'll all come back. It's all there. And that's the whole idea.
Yeah. So I remember we met a fellow who was an ornithologist when we were in Skiboten, and he walked us across the beach to help us differentiate between the pebbled rocks, the speckled rocks, and the speckled eggs. It was an absolute fascination and dedication of his life to this.
That's interesting, actually, how people spend their whole life onto one little thing, and then
it's
amazing.
I remember that the mosquitoes were fierce, and I got basically turned into one large mosquito bite when we were coming back from Sweden back to Denmark on the ferry. I think Vivian had some sort of antihistamine or something in her backpack, so she gave me one, and basically I collapsed. I just turned into a soggy mob pile, and Vivian basically had to carry me and my backpack onto the boat so that we could continue our trip. I think the other thing is that when you're traveling through a country like that, it's much harder to get to know people. You're having short snippets of interactions with people, but you're not getting to know the culture. You're not getting to know the people. You're passing through, and so the focus is on the visual aspect and on caring for yourself, finding a campsite, pitching a tent, looking for the road to the next place. And so, I think it's in some ways a missed opportunity not to have taken the opportunity to connect more deeply with the people in those cultures and countries that we visited.
Yeah, because actually what happens is that when you travel, there is this whole touristy side of a country which you are exposed to, which is not really the country. I mean, those are people who have created a little world of there, and every little thing is worked out according to tourists. And on the other end, there is a world out there, which is where you really want to be part of, but how do you become a part of it? Which with my travel, I've tried to do that. I've always tried to do that. I go to places, I don't even see those things where you have to get a stamp. Okay, I've gone here, kind of thing. I haven't done that. A lot of places I haven't done that.
Yeah.
It doesn't really attract me. Well, look, you have to, if you see it, you can see it on a photograph, and you don't have to go and take a picture of yourself in front of it. There are ways to do it, but actually getting out, walking in the streets, not in the touristy part, but the other part, what people are doing, I've always enjoyed that. It's really been
Mm.
good experience.
Mm-hmm. You know, and we were there kind of on a mission to do the Europe thing and come home. You know, and after that, Vivian went off to her job at the Swiss boarding school, and I continued on my travels. I bought a bicycle because I was tired of riding on trains, and so I began to cycle. I can't remember where I bought a bicycle, but anyway, I bought a bicycle and continued to ride south towards Switzerland.
Oh,
Um,
that's really nice.
yeah, I met some lovely people. I was staying in youth hostels and riding from youth hostel to youth hostel, and so I met lots of other Canadian and American tourists who were doing the same thing that I was doing, and you know, sharing in the cooking and the stories and just
Yeah.
that experience of not needing to be anywhere at a particular time, not having any responsibilities other than to get myself from A to B.
Yeah, but I should not be saying it. I should not be putting words in your mouth. But I'm just thinking that the fact that you land up in a youth hostel and you have people from all over, and suddenly you have to merge with it, talk to them, interact with them, and get to know them that fast. Maybe that's what maybe in terms of mediation also helps you, and otherwise also in life it helps you. So that's the learning experience. The way I'm looking, I'm not saying, I'm just saying I'm not putting words in your mouths. I'm just thinking that's the way it's been for me. I think because you said you just have to be there, and you maybe you're just there for a day or two, but because you're in that kind of, it's a different atmosphere. Youth hostel atmosphere is so different, so you suddenly have to be totally interacting and getting to know people and making friends also.
Yeah, it is. You bond and you unbond and you move on. I think that one of the differences for me was that I was traveling alone, and many of the people that I met with and interacted in were either a couple or were traveling in a group. And so, you know, I met people who were more than willing to include me in their group, and people who could care less. And you know, that didn't bother me one way or the other. I was out there, you know, doing my own thing. It was nice to have people to ride with on occasion, but I didn't need that. I was just enjoying being out there on the road on my bicycle. um, you know, I did have some unfortunate events on my bicycle. I had some problems, so I found a bike shop and I took my bike in. And when I went back to pick it up, the guy said, "Oh no, you know, you don't have to pay. Just come into the back room and let me fuck you, and then you won't have to pay." And I said, "No, thank you. I'm not interested in that."
Mhm.
And so I
But where is this
found a
happening? Which
local
country is this?
Germany.
I mean, okay. Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a woman traveling alone. These are the issues that happen, which is very sad because I mean, women
Mhm.
also need to travel. They also have to
Yeah.
travel alone. That's a sad thing. And then I don't know. I mean, I can't even understand. I mean, I can't even come close to understanding that. But it is must have. It's a
Mm.
difficult thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and you know, I found the police, and the police got my bicycle back for me, and uh, on I went. And then I decided to put my bike on the train and speed up my travels because I was running a bit behind, and my bike was stolen. So
Yeah.
that was the end of the bike ride.
How did that happen?
All the bikes got put into a car, and then when you arrived, I think I arrived in Frankfurt in Germany, and all the bikes were being unloaded, and I wasn't the only person, but several bikes had gone missing somehow in that train ride from Bonn to Frankfurt, and
The sad part
it
is,
was
Kathy,
gone.
how I look at it is, it's the same thing had happened in India. We would have been blamed as this developing country where they just steal bikes and all that. But it happens to people everywhere. And
They
like I
steal
said,
bikes everywhere. They
yeah.
steal bikes in Vancouver all the time. You know, you can have the biggest lock in the world and they still steal your bike. I've had numerous bikes stolen over the years. It's just like, yeah, oh well, don't buy an expensive bike.
But what is it to it? I mean, basically, I don't know. Why is it? Because a bike is something that would be used by the person, and that's why it's stealing it. And because I don't know how much you can get out of selling it.
Well, I think, it's I don't know the answer. I mean, you can only ask the bike stealer that question. But I think what I've heard is that often the bikes are taken apart and sold for parts. I know in Hawaii, one time I had a car stolen, and that turned out to be the case, that the car is sold for parts. And so, people, because we have such an inequitable system, people are looking to whatever ways are available to
Yeah,
them
yeah.
to survive. And I don't begrudge them. I just, it's like, okay, now I don't have a bike. I guess I'll be riding the train. Um,
Mhm.
so, yeah,
Oh,
I went to see a woman who had lived in the same building that we'd lived in when I was there as in Frankfurt as a child, and spent a lovely evening with her, with Frau Schatz, and then carried on. I think from there I'm not sure where I went. I either went to Dijon or I went to England. I can't remember.
but Kathy, when you are traveling through these places and you have interactions with people, you end up generalizing that this is what people from this country are like. Would you do that, or it's just that?
No,
No.
no, 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 no. I don't think I did that. Because I was traveling in youth hostels, I was also meeting people from all over the world. And so it was more, I think I was being attuned to people as individuals, and um, and I'm certainly aware that there was sort of conversation on the street that Canadians were nice and American tourists weren't, and and as a
But
speaking French in France, and being laughed at for my French, or speaking to a young woman from Quebec at that time who said I had no right to speak French, and that Canada was a mess, and it was like, yeah, okay, whatever.
that's another lots of things there also.
Oh yes, yes.
No,
Um,
no, I was thinking because your bike ride was the interesting one, that you were meeting people who were obviously locals, total local, and not part of the touristy part also. So that exposure that you had that would have been a good thing, to actually meeting people like that.
yeah, and I didn't have, other than that unfortunate interaction, I wasn't really meeting a lot of local people because I was traveling with a group of other young tourists from youth hostel to youth hostel. And certainly I would go into a store and I could speak enough German to get whatever food I needed, or whatever supplies I needed, or whatever police help I needed. um, but um, you know real interactions with the German people was limited. When I was traveling with my friend Vivian, we did stay with a friend of her family's in Aarhus in Denmark, and certainly got to see a very different side of Danish culture there. They had a pig farm, got to see the pigs and learn how to say Rose and Fleuze. I'm sure I can't say it right anymore, but
What does that mean? What is that?
it's red currant, something red currant with jam, I think, or not with jam, with cream. With cream, it's a kind of a dessert thing, I think. So,
But tell me, have I got you up too early in the morning? It's not too early,
well,
is it? Have you had
it's
your
I
you
got
got
up at 5.
okay? Okay, sorry.
Coffee's cold.
What about your no breakfast at this stage?
Oh, I
Only
had breakfast before I came on because I was trying to wake myself up a little bit.
I know, I can see that. But what is the temperature like right now?
It's probably around 15 degrees.
Okay, so that's not too bad. That's nice.
No, no,
Yeah,
it's quite pleasant out.
yeah. But in the camper, otherwise you have heating.
Uh, there's heating, but I don't have it turned on. It's quite warm enough in here. No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
But the sun is out.
No, it's cloudy. It's kind of blue sky and clouds.
Mhm.
It's supposed to be sunny today. We shall see.
That makes a lot of difference because that's the only thing I have a problem with going to cold countries is because we're so used to the sun that if I don't get the sun for even 2 days, it just feels strange. Just feels strange. So,
Yes, yes.
but
Well,
you people live through it, so I'm sure it's all right. It works.
we survived. Yeah, we survived.
Yes. Okay, so basically now we're in Denmark and then we were in Denmark at the pig farm and
Yep,
then
for a little while. I think that was on the way up. I can't remember if it was up through Scandinavia or back down or at some point, but just
any yeah,
reflecting on your question of meeting local people
yeah.
and connecting. And so that brief experience in Denmark to just to and you know, the experience of being welcomed into somebody's home who didn't know us, who, you know, there were family connections but didn't know us, and so so welcoming, so hospitable, so willing to share little snippets of their culture. You know, we learned that, for example, that the children, when they go to school, speak quite a different dialect from what the adults speak, and that that dialect is apparently constantly evolving. So that was a curious thing to learn. Um, you know, and I'd gone to school in Germany as a child, and so you know I spoke not a bad Kinderdeutsch, but it certainly wasn't the German of uh, of of adults of adult interaction. So, but on the other hand, people were very tolerant of my willingness to attempt to speak German, however ungrammatical and with such a lousy accent that it was, that I was tolerated or, you know, laughed with.
No, but there is something about language, definitely. People like it. I mean, whatever. If you are attempting it itself is good. I mean, they're just happy that you're attempting it. You're trying to
Mm-hmm.
basically they just get the feeling that you're trying to connect. And which is what
Yes.
the nice thing is that.
Yeah. I want to know who they are. I want to know about them. I want to know how they think. Um, uh, you know, I think that I'm a lot more curious now, certainly, than I was then. I think certainly the focus as a 19-year-old was on how am I going to survive? Um, uh, what do I need? Um, and so looking to adults that I knew to get the help that I felt like I needed to find my lost bicycle, for example. Um, uh, you know, I knew who to turn to look for help. Um,
So basically honing your survival skills.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah. It's
And then I
important, I
went,
think. Yeah.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and then I think I went from Frankfurt. I went to Dijon in France, and I went to university for a month in Dijon to practice, learn some French. And I stayed in student residences there, and and there I met a large cohort from the University of Georgia,
Mhm.
uh, and um, and became close friends with the. There were also Japanese students there, and so there was definitely a international cultural community of young people there to learn French and to learn about French culture. We had cultural tours, um, wine tasting events. Somehow we had bicycles. We went riding out through the countryside, and again we stayed in French farms, and we slept in French hay barns or in French farmers' fields, and we were again welcomed and introduced to cafe au lait and fresh bread, and given free access to hay barns and places to sleep. Um, I'd be curious to know if young people are still doing that, and if they still treated with such, in some ways, delight that we were there traveling around in their country, riding our bikes down these country roads, and that we weren't. I mean, sometimes certainly we were doing the touristy things, but for the most part, we were a bunch of kids riding through the countryside, getting to know each other and interacting with the French farmers and shopkeepers.
I think that'll be interesting to find out. Are the young people doing those trips? What's happening?
Mhm.
I have no idea. I don't know.
Yeah.
You would know
No,
better.
me neither.
I don't know. So, so that I think is important. I mean, these kind of experiences, I think, but I don't know. Maybe if these become viral on Instagram, they'll all be there. They'll all get there. It just has to be one person going there, one influencer going there and doing it, and the whole world will be there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I very much encouraged my own children to travel, and they did. But I guess we'll get to that some other time.
So, no, that was a call. I was just taking my daughter calling
No
me.
worries.
She
No
doesn't.
worries.
She did not know that there's a thing going on. So, no, but I think because like for her also, I do feel that is something she should have done. But I don't think they're even thinking about these things.
Mm,
I think going on their own could be. I mean, I'm not saying that this is an Indian thing or not. I think maybe traveling on their own, maybe again the whole woman thing, girl thing. Maybe I don't know. Did we not encourage it, or I don't know what really happened. Now it's been years now, so I can't really go back. But at 18, if she had said that I'm doing that, would she have gone, not gone? I can't say, because I would have
mm,
encouraged it. I would have, if she had come to me and said, "Yeah, look, I'm planning a trip," because I did it, so I would have wanted her to do. But I don't think she ever had that conversation.
mm,
Maybe
mhm.
as a, are we too protective about girls? I don't
I don't know. It was certainly something that I felt like that I had benefited from, that I wanted my children to see the world. And so my son went to Europe, um, and hitchhiked around for 6 weeks on his own. And then eventually he went to Australia on several occasions and taught skiing down there, for months at a time. My daughter went to work in Rwanda, traveled to Europe with me, went to university in Australia. So, it was something that I didn't question. For me, it was kind of a given. At some point you're going to do this,
know.
and
No, I think the main thing was that the fact that, like for her, traveling with us, she was all right with traveling with us. Maybe some children at that age don't want to travel with their parents, so that meant that could be. So then they travel on their own, maybe. She was all right with
yeah,
that, so it was
yeah.
okay.
Well, and my children were both competitive skiers, and so they had started to travel sometimes with me, but sometimes on their own to different events, starting at a very young age, and so they had learned also at a young age to look after themselves, out there in the world. Certainly, um, uh,
Yeah. No, that's the main thing, that you keep talking about the fact about being part of sports or being part of teams. Just the fact that they went out somewhere as a team and they stayed together and they had to, that whole interaction as a group. All that's a learning experience, not just about the sport only. Okay, they were, I mean,
oh,
yeah, it's not just about the sport. It's actually being part of a team. I think that's also important. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
So basically now Dijon, and you've learned your French. You learned your French? Yeah.
Oui, je parle français.
Okay. That's about how much I can understand.
That's about how much I can speak these days because I never get a chance. But anyway, but it was interesting. A woman that I became very close friends with there, and yet somehow we lost connection for many years. And then about 6 months ago, I found her, I think almost accidentally, on Facebook, and we reconnected and shared a bit of our lives and in some ways interestingly similar journeys.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that was cool.
So this conversation that you're having with me, kind of you had that conversation about sharing that those experiences.
Yes.
But what about Dijon is famous for the mustard sauce.
Correct.
So did you learn how to make it or not?
No, but we ate a lot of it. And it's also a famous wine region as well. So
Which part of France is it? Which part of France is it?
It's a very hot, dry part of France. It's in the eastern side of France.
Okay.
Sort of there. I can sort of place it in my mind's eye, but I can't describe.
I'll have a look. I'll have a look online. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But
because I haven't seen that part, so I don't know. But it should be nice. Must be nice. I mean, it's just like I said, the fact that these places have maintained their culture and those towns in that sense by itself is nice for us, because that's something we haven't been able to do.
That's right. And at university you got very inexpensive meals. I think dinner was like maybe 75 cents or something, and we got introduced to all sorts of French foods. We ate horse meat. We ate creme fraiche, all sorts of things. There was always wine in a little plastic bottle if you wanted it. So we were being introduced to French culture, and obviously there were French students, in the university as well that you would interact with over meals and things like that as well.
But you weren't exposed to or taught about the finer aspects of wine at that stage? The wine tasting and the wine.
Yes, we were. Was one of the courses that we took was an introduction to wine and cheese and the finer points of cheese and wine and pairings and all of that kind of stuff. Can't remember what I learned, but I know we were close to it.
Did you use that knowledge as the main thing later in life? That these part of survival skills?
No, I know what kind of wine I like and what kind of wine I don't like, but some of it's French, some of it's Canadian, some of it's German, some of it's Italian.
That's a world that I don't know much about. So I'm sure it's interesting. It's an interesting world. So yeah. Okay, but otherwise, then you were traveling around that area. What was that area?
We traveled around that area, and then we went home. I went to I met my dad in Paris at the airport when I was seeing off all my University of Georgia friends, and I'd said to my dad, they speak French with a Southern accent. And my dad said that, that's not possible. And then I introduced him to my friend Daisy, and she said, "Bonjour, Dr. Porter." And my dad kind of went.
That's one part he hasn't seen French speaking like that. Okay. But any point of time, you can always, if this trip is something which I'm taking you too long into that trip, you can always take us somewhere else and come back to it. I'm okay with that. But I'm just saying, because I'm just saying these are I don't know whether this is formative years, as we call them, are they? But this is an important part of your growing up. These are things which make you what you are. So
sure. And these are snippets of memories that I've retained, and I'm and there's other things that happened that I've clearly forgotten or can't access at the moment. I know I met my dad in Paris, and we rented a car, and he drove like a maniac around the streets of Paris, all the time saying at the top of his lungs, "It's priorité à droite, priorité à droite," running through all the roundabouts and everything.
But which year is this?
Which year was this? I think it might have been 1970 or 1971, something like that.
Because I'm just thinking that you saying Paris, but the Paris of that time and the Paris of today definitely will be so different. So,
Oh yes, yes, yeah. My dad had purchased a Renault, and so we picked up the Renault and picked up my mother and my sister, and then we couldn't find a hotel, so we slept in the car on the Champs-Élysées.
wow. Okay, so you can cut out the car part. You slept on the Champs-Élysées.
Yes. Hmm.
So that must have been interesting. I mean, how do you? I mean, what was Paris like for you?
Oh, Paris then was a bit of a blur. I didn't actually spend too much time there. I'd spent more time ultimately in Dijon. I went to university in Grenoble during the winter, so that I could practice my French and ski at the same time.
Wow.
I went there with my sister. We lived in a convent. That was an interesting experience as well. Um,
Very good. No, you just can't leave it at an interesting experience. You can't. This is not that kind of show. So you have to tell us more about that.
So we lived in a convent. My dad had given me Italian lira all in cash money because we didn't have credit cards or those kinds of things in those days. So I'd have to go to the bank and exchange a 10 million lira note or something. I can't recall. But there was a cheese shop on the way to the university, and it had a counter that was probably 50 feet long with all different kinds of cheeses. And so my sister and I decided that we'd start at one end and work our way down. And I think we got about 2 feet down in the month that we were there. Just so many cheeses to try. And some of them we couldn't afford to try. The pastries were pretty good too. We tried to do the same thing in the pastry shop to work our way through the pastries. I think I got stuck at the millefeuille, didn't want to move on from there.
Using that word, I would not even know what that looks like.
A millefeuille is like a thin little sheets of pastry with cream in between, like
Okay.
layers and layers and layers. So lots of interesting foods that were sort of familiar but not familiar, so that you could feel comfortable trying them. And then we skied. We met some Americans and some people from Britain who had a car. We piled, I think, 6 of us into a Mini Cooper S,
How did you
and
manage that?
our skis and our boots to go skiing.
But you're good at skiing. I mean, it's something that you enjoy doing and you're good at it. That's all.
Yes. I was a ski instructor starting at age 16.
Wow.
And so by the time I was in Europe as a 19-year-old, I was not a bad skier. I certainly became a much better skier, skiing in Grenoble with people who were ski instructors in Colorado, in the United States, for example, a big ski area. I can remember one of the fellows that we skied with had been in the Vietnam War and had lost a leg. And he could do things on that one leg skiing that the rest of us, we couldn't keep up with. He was just an amazing athlete, an amazing skier. And I think, skiing and being in Europe was in some ways his way of leaving the past trauma behind. And so it was about good times and good snow and the camaraderie of skiing with other great skiers, and then remembering that there was a little homework in French to be addressed.
Okay, one of those things that you have to do if you have to do the skiing.
Yeah,
This is just
yeah,
one of those side
yeah,
things you have to manage.
yeah. But the skiing, the places we went to ski were the parts that still stand out for me.
I have to see what this place is like.
Mm.
What's the spelling of this place?
Well, we were living in Grenoble, so we skied at L'Alpe d'Huez. I can't remember the names of all. Whatever it's a circle of, it's in the French Alps, and
Let's see. We'll get Grenoble on this map. Let's see from there we'll be able to find out. Interesting. No, because one is you giving us a word and a place. The other is to actually see it and see what it looks like. It's always nice to do that.
for sure. And the other aspect of living in Grenoble at the time was it was the time of the student riots in France, and so we were in the streets and like all the other students, trying to pry cobblestones out of the blocks and to throw them at the French military police who were standing there with their 5-foot high plexiglass shields, spraying gas into the crowd, and people were being bussed in from Paris, and students were coming in from all over France to join the riots. I don't think we clearly understood what those riots were about, but again, it goes back to this question of control and power, and clearly students were unhappy about some aspect of life as a student, and as students we felt an obligation to participate in that, and at the same time, when it got scary, we felt an obligation to leave.
Obviously, I mean, but what was, I mean, in terms of the actual issue with them, what was the whole thing all about?
I don't know. I mean, I did find out many years later, but I can't recall at the moment. I mean, I think it probably had to do with the same reason students are still in the streets. Is it has to do with the cost of tuition and the requirements to pay for that tuition and pay it back. My daughter was likely to be paying off her student tuition for the rest of her life.
This I don't understand. This one is a bit, I need to understand this aspect. You keep hearing about this whole student loan kind of a trap that people are into. That's supposed to be, I mean, it's quite serious, I think.
It's very serious. It is indeed serious, because it, and I've seen universities in my lifetime move away from being centers of learning to being corporations with clients instead of centers of learning with students. That's a pretty black and white description, of course, because
so basically corporate America has got everywhere into the educational institutions also.
Yes, it has. And I can remember when I was in university, at the University of British Columbia, there was conversation that Molson's, a large brew building business, offered to build new skating rinks for the university. We had a very good hockey program, and also figure skating to a lesser extent, but offered to pay for the construction of new arenas. And the board of directors of the university said, no, we don't engage in that kind of activity here. We don't let corporations, contribute to the university in that way, which was a little bit of a farce. Eventually, we ended up with the Molson clock. But at the same time, I'm listening to my father, who's talking about in some departments and some professors working very closely with corporations to create and innovate and design new things. And the struggle for finances to conduct research has always been problematic. And I don't think we have yet worked out what's the relationship between capital and academia and workers. Yeah. It's an ongoing question, I think.
Yeah, it is a little complex. I mean, because you need it also. You don't need them also, and how they go to benefit from it, how they go to exploit it. I mean, there are. I think it's the way things have been structured, and to go back and say where did we go wrong, and where do we move away from it. So there's lots there. I think I'll stay.
For sure.
But I was looking at Grenoble, if that's the way you pronounce it. Beautiful place.
Yes, very beautiful place.
I mean, let me just put it up on screen.
Famous for walnuts.
I don't know about that, but look at the place.
Oh, yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. So we'd be
This
up there skiing in those little hills up there.
up here.
Mm,
Wow.
yep. Yep.
I mean, of course, these are pictures for us. You were there. You
Yes,
were.
I was there.
Oh,
I was there.
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
At least, I mean, really. So that's how it was. So
Yeah.
you've been to these nice, beautiful places and skiing there.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But not that you're not living in a beautiful place now. I'm sure it's beautiful. I mean,
It is beautiful. Can't really show you,
yeah,
but
you must.
I'll try. Let's see. Can you see anything out there?
Yeah,
So,
we want to see some mountains. That's what I want to see.
can you see that mountain up there?
Okay, actually, what the thing is that mesh, I think mesh, what the mesh is doing is it's actually not being able to focusing.
Okay.
The camera has gone and focusing. It's focusing on the mesh. If you keep it
Let
a
me
little
see.
bit, yeah, a little bit away from the mesh, I think it'll be able to focus on the mountain.
Maybe I can find a picture. Just a minute.
Let me put it up here. Let me see if I can find something here. Falkland, British Columbia.
Okay, just a minute.
But there's something about.
Can I share my screen?
Yeah. Just give 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. 1 second. Yeah, you can do it now. But there's something about seeing it on this camera and seeing it otherwise. I ultimately seeing both of them on screen, but there is something about you showing us those mountains in the back and you showing it on a picture.
I know.
It's strange, isn't it strange? Because for me, it's still the same screen.
Yeah, fair enough. Photos. Ah. Oh well.
Let me see some.
Not working.
Not
Okay, I'm gonna open the door and go outside.
Yes, that'd be nice. See if it's working now. But when you come back, we'll check.
I have to get out.
And then
mountains, basketball. Can you see anything?
Yep.
No.
So this is what you need. You just need some nice nature in the middle of nature. I think that's where the good thinking happens.
Yeah, I'm growing a squash.
Right. But I tell you what, I'm more interested in the ceiling of your camper. What are all those?
Yeah, well, when we bought the camper, it had all these stickers on the ceiling. So
okay.
There you go.
I thought it was going to be one sticker for every place you've been or something like that.
No. Got nothing to do with me. It's the previous owners.
But this is one. I mean, this is one that gets attached to a car, or is this?
No, I don't. I guess so. I don't know.
No, but the camper itself. But the camper, when you to move it around, I mean, it's
on a truck. It's on a pickup truck.
Okay. But that must be a nice way to travel, because I'm sure because this is one
means
person.
you don't have to put your tent up.
Yeah, because there's this person who's he must be about 77, and all the time when you meet him, most of the time he'll talk about his trip around Europe in a camper van.
Okay. Yeah, that was a popular thing.
Yeah,
that was a popular thing.
So
sure.
those things, I think, those, like I said, that's what I was asking about. Those memories are what stay. I mean, you've gone through so much in life, but imagine that might have been only a month, maybe.
Yes.
But that month is such a moving month for you that it goes on for life.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
But otherwise, the sky is clear, totally clear now. So that the smoke is gone, everything gone.
Yes, the smoke is gone. The smoke is gone. Yeah, and we hope it stays that way. In past years, we've had significant fires well into October, and it's still pretty dry. So we'll see what happens.
No, because the only thing is that, of course, your lungs got damaged, but our lung also has got damaged. I don't know how much damage has been done on this. Has there been some? I'm sure you must have seen reports on that. Is the major damage very huge?
Oh yes, in fact, I have a little app on my phone that tells me when I have to leave because there's a fire, tells me what the air quality is, tells me if there's been a traffic incident that might block the highway in and out. So,
But how many square kilometers of damage has taken place?
oh, I
Must
can't
be,
remember.
must be
I'd have to
thousands
look
of it.
it up.
There must be
Oh,
thousands of square.
definitely. Yeah.
Because I mean, once that whole fire starts, it just goes on. Because that is part of our lung also.
The fire that I'm talking about that was near me was 811 square kilometers.
Wow, that's huge.
It's
Well,
huge.
no, the main thing is that you have so much forest. So for you, it is a small percentage of your forest. But for other places, it's a huge space. I mean, that much gone.
Oh, yes. And when I look at
I mean, 800 square kilometers of forest gone. It's huge.
so
Wait, this one is saying, the one report I'm seeing is saying 4,250 square kilometers of land burned in British Columbia.
yeah, 15,000 hectares of land between April 1st and now has burned.
Oh, imagine this is what I'm seeing. One sec. I show you the report that I'm seeing. One of them. That's
Yeah,
huge.
that's the same one. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
4,250 square kilometers. Wow.
Yeah.
That's major damage of our
Oh,
lung.
oh,
Yeah,
it's major damage to the lungs of the world and
exactly.
to the lungs of local people. I mean, there were many times over the course of the summer, and still, in fact, where people who have any difficulties breathing are told to stay indoors. And I know I have a colleague in Oregon State, and he was saying that last summer he had to stay indoors for 6 weeks.
Yeah, because I mean, finally you have to breathe, and you have to breathe properly. That's what the whole COVID situation was also. I mean, the fact that if you can't breathe, the basic thing, the way it affects you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what is it? What is your plan, Kathy? Are you going to take us more into life, or is the morning got to you now? You want to do it another part? Totally your wish. This is totally flexible.
I think I can go for another half hour,
Perfect.
and then I will go. So I'm just going to close the door of the camper here
Yeah,
because it's
please.
cooler outside than it is in here.
But still good weather.
Oh yes, it's lovely weather if you're outside and moving around, but if you're sitting here talking, it's not quite warm enough for sitting here talking.
Yeah, definitely. So now we're in France, and we haven't. Where are we going from here?
From France, I went to live in Italy stay with my parents. Oh no, from there I went to work in the boarding school in Switzerland, and
Where was that?
in Cran-sur-Sierre. You can look that up on your map too.
You have to give me the spelling with your pronunciation. I mean, those are
Crans.
Yeah.
Sur, S-U-R, so hyphen Sur, S-U-R, hyphen Sierre, S-I-E-R-R-E.
Good thing is in my search, it says after that golf. So let me see that. That's interesting.
It's a very little tourist town with several Swiss boarding schools for wealthy people to drop their children off. I was a monitrice, so I was I wasn't a teacher. I was a teacher's helper. Oh yes, golf.
Right now I'm on the golf course, and look at the beautiful place.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place in the mountains.
But where is it? Where is it?
It's in the south French quadrant of Switzerland. So it's a French speaking quadrant. Fairly close to the Italian border.
Well, I mean, is it where you get in from Lyon, from that side, somewhere there?
I can't recall. Came by car. My dad drove me.
Okay. And it
Um,
was always interesting to see where these places are. You have this hope
mhm.
that one day you're going to play golf in this place. So you should you should keep yourself happy that it might happen one day.
Well, I don't play golf, so
While like, I think everyone should play golf, just to be
Oh
out there on that beautiful golf course, only for that, nothing else.
no, well, I get out there on my beautiful sailboat, or
Yeah, that's
go camping. I don't need to be on a golf course with
that.
fertilized greens.
Yeah, exactly. You're lucky that way. That way, you're lucky.
Mhm,
We don't
mhm.
all have that option, so we have to
No,
create these
that's
little spaces in these cities of ours where at least we have some part of nature available to us right there. Otherwise, where we don't get that option. I mean, you can
no,
understand how big we are and how crowded we are. I'm sure you.
yes,
I don't know whether
totally.
you can actually imagine. I mean, you've
I,
traveled a lot, so you can. But we
I've
are,
been,
yeah,
yeah, I've traveled to very, very crowded parts of the world, but um, living in those kinds of situations, no, I haven't experienced that. Where are you in India? I forgot
Delhi,
to ask.
Delhi.
Ah, okay, okay.
No, but just the fact that look, you live as part of nature. Okay, I'm a little lucky, so I have a green area in front of my house. So like, okay, I'm a little lucky there. But otherwise, I mean, you need something like that. You need an open space. You want to look out at the greens. So I mean, a lot of people might say, oh, elitist sport and everything like that. But the fact is that being part of nature is not an elitist concept. Everyone should get it. So if we
Oh,
get it on,
absolutely. I agree 100% with that. Part of the challenge that we are suffering in our world today is our disconnection with nature,
yeah.
and we've been given this idea that we can control nature, and nature's like a recalcitrant child, is not willing or wanting to be controlled. Thank you very much. So we end up with wildfires and things like that.
Because actually felt that because of this pandemic and working online, that aspect can change and people can start moving out into places closer to nature, and that
Oh,
would, if it would help things. I mean, okay, you move out and you say you use solar power and you do all those things, you become a self-sufficient unit, so you take the pressure off cities, and then things can go back. I mean, look, for a city like ours, Delhi, suddenly we got blue skies. We hadn't seen those, so we can change things very fast. It doesn't take time
yes.
at all.
Absolutely, and I think that's quite true. Is that people have, as things around the pandemic loosened, people have flocked out into nature. The campsites are full, the trails are full. People are on their bikes, they're walking, they're hiking, they're camping. And you're right. The air has been, until the fires came along, the air has been cleaner, particularly in the large center, than it has been for years.
But the
So
point is that, yeah, when you say cleaner, it's such a relative thing. If you
of
find,
course it is.
if you check our air quality, okay, things have become better according to me now. But imagine we get about 300 AQI, 300 at the same time. Where was I seeing this? This was which city? I think was it London or wherever? It was something like 4 and 300. And people there, for them 20 might be polluted. For us 20, like, can we ever get 20?
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. I live in a very lovely part of the world, and I don't have to deal with air pollution on a daily basis. I remember being in Los Angeles, actually, when we were leaving to come. Vivian and I were leaving to come to Europe when I was 18, and you couldn't see down the end of the street. The end of the street in Los Angeles was kind of this blurry yellow color because the air pollution was so bad.
Yeah.
And then the catalytic converters were introduced, and the air quality got significantly better in a short period of years. But
But this was
um,
which year again? No, which year is this?
that would have been 1970.
Okay. So things, okay, some basic steps, if you take, you can change things. It takes a little bit of time, but the only thing is that these are things which, I mean, you can understand the numbers involved here in terms of the vehicles. So they did try CNG here. but of course they said, okay, public transport now should have CNG, but otherwise cars didn't really move to it because it wasn't easy to get whole distribution system to have places to fill that up, and you had lines in front of those places. So there were issues there, but it was a step that had to be taken. So these small steps, I mean,
Yeah,
could
I think we're seeing that another kind of transition now as people move to electric vehicles.
but I think,
And
but that I think we still have to figure out that those batteries, what are we going to do with those batteries once they go out? I mean, we have to replace them. So are we really creating a clean space or not? I don't know. I really don't know
I don't know.
because
No, I agree. I agree. We have to go back to horses, I guess, where they can
but
poop on the
horses,
road.
yeah, but we'll find out when we say horses and the gas that they that they to talk about the cows and all what they create. So everywhere there will be something. Finally, what we need to do, as how I'm looking at it, is that we have to have self-sufficient villages, and then after that, you don't really need to travel out. And maybe like one horse carriage goes out and gets something from the neighboring village, which you don't get. So I think we'll have to maybe break it down to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we may well be headed in that direction. The challenge, of course, is that some parts of the world have access to more beneficial soil, more beneficial water than other parts of the world, and unfortunately, we've yeah. Anyway, we know all about that.
So,
Mm.
but what was Italy? Oh, okay, no, we were in Switzerland at the at again. How do you pronounce this place?
Cran-sur-Sierre.
Okay, okay, that'll be difficult for me, so I think I won't try it. Transfer is okay. Okay,
You know, and it was a boarding school for the children of the elite. There were children of actors there, and the part that was most difficult for me was these children were desperate for somebody to love them, for somebody to care for them. Um, and behavior what challenges and learning disabilities were rampant, things that I didn't understand at the time. And 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 as a monitrice, it's a hierarchy in Switzerland, that as a young uh, uh, woman, predominantly wanting to become a teacher eventually. I think this was part of the process, that you did this kind of support, but it was more like being a maid with and at times, we were required to make the beds and gather up the laundry, and it, it wasn't. I think I was maybe in the classroom once a week, helping children learn to read English, but beyond that, there was nothing that sort of fit with what I'd been told was going to be my experience.
Mhm.
And I felt increasingly controlled. I couldn't go out. And this is a young woman who now has been traveling on her own through Europe for a number of months, to come into a place where I can't leave to go out to see the neighborhood at night. I have to be in bed by a certain time. I have severe restrictions on my time. I can only go out when I'm accompanying children out into the world. And the way that the children were treated was, and one of my father's very dear friends had sent his children to this school, and they'd had a wonderful time skiing and doing all sorts of things. I was experiencing a very different side of the business. And so it just became clear to me that this was not anything that was a place where I wanted to spend my time. And so um, wrote a letter to my dad, and he came, and my friend Vivian was in a school. We never even got to see each other when we were there. We were not permitted to go out, so we couldn't even see each other. So my father came and to take me.
So
out of that
basically,
situation because
basically
I
you had,
couldn't get out on my own because the fellow who was running the place had taken my passport. He
my
was
God, this
supposed to
is,
submit the passport to the authorities and pay a tax for my being there. And he didn't do that.
wow.
And because he wanted to keep the money for himself. And so it took significant negotiation on my father's part to get my passport and to get me out of there.
My God,
Uh,
this sounds like going to Saudi Arabia or something.
well, I mean, again, it's a very controlled society. And, my father was having none of it. And he was quite determined that I get my passport. He had, gathered enough information and to understand that this fellow had my passport, the fellow who ran the school. So he got it, and I left, and I went, and Vivian, we both got picked up, and off we went to stay with my parents in Bologna in Italy for a couple of months. We spent Christmas down there, and then we both went off to work in England before coming home.
No, I think Bologna, I think we need more on that. But that must be because Italy must be interesting. I mean, it's a different
Oh,
culture, totally different
of
culture.
course. So now I'm thrown into another culture suddenly, and it was, my mother was learning Italian, so I went along to try to learn a little Italian so that I could get by. And and again, suddenly I'm being exposed to levels of poverty that I had no idea existed in what I considered to be, a well-established, the oldest university town in Europe, and yet on the sidewalks around the stores there were people who were begging, children who had been maimed intentionally so that they would be more appealing for people to give money to. The contrast in those who had money and wealth and beautifully dressed women and children and everybody, men, women, and children, beautifully dressed, in contrast to many gypsies living on the street, disenfranchised, marginalized. And Italy also had a pretty vibrant prostitution going on. So you could drive around the ring street and see the women in the wintertime standing out by the fires to keep warm, soliciting business. So, quite an introduction to the
a totally different aspect of things which you did not expect at all. I mean, you would not have
yeah
expected.
yeah
So surprises. I mean, okay, so Italy in that time was like that. I mean, today obviously people would not even know, I'm sure. But
I don't know. I haven't been back to that part of Italy. I've been back to Venice in 2000, but that's the most recent trip I had to Europe and to Italy, and not to Bologna. I went to Venice.
so what I need to see, I don't even know where in Italy is Bologna, so I'll have a look at it up till then.
Yeah.
Look, I don't have the map in my mind, the map of the world.
I couldn't describe it. I know it's north and east of Rome. That's about the best I can do. It's east of Florence. It's south and west of Venice. But that's the best I can do.
Okay, so okay, so it's quite north of Florence. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But what is the terrain like? I mean,
What is the what like?
The terrain. Look, Tuscany is always a nice place to go to. Is nice.
It's kind of rolling hills and beautiful sun in the evening. I was there pretty much mostly in the wintertime. I think I arrived in November and left in I can't recall, maybe January probably. So just was there for a couple of months, and then I went on to England. But and then I did a lot of skiing there. my family, my dad and my sister and I all skied, and so we went off skiing. Vivian and I went off skiing and managed to ski with the Italian army. That was great fun. They were good skiers. We were good skiers. We got to ski with them.
That must be nice. But this is how,
Yeah.
I mean, skiing was happening how far from Bologna?
Probably about an hour's drive, an hour and a half, maybe.
But the thing is that when I do my Google search on Bologna, it only shows the town, nothing around it. So I don't even know what the terrain is like around that.
It's
So,
kind of rolling hills, but and then we went into the Italian Dolomites to ski at Cortina d'Ampezzo. We skied at Corno alle Scale, just outside of Torino. I think I'm losing my voice here, Vikram. I might have to end.
okay, no, not an issue. We can always take it later. We can always do it later. Don't push
Sure.
yourself so much also. Because you know me, for me, I can go on.
I know you can.
So when you say that, it just sounds like this guy can go on.
No,
For...
it's a compliment. You have patience, you listen, and you bring in interesting insights. It's great.
Yeah,
Great.
So I enjoy it. So any point of time, whenever you feel that, look, there's no issue. We can always do it. We can do it whenever you want. I mean, that's not a
Sure.
problem at all.
Sure.
That's the advantage that I have. We can.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I also noticed that I'm in the camper without any electricity, and my computer is getting close to dying.
Okay. So,
So rather than being suddenly cut off, I think we might end it today, leaving me stranded in Italy. And
I think, yeah, we'll do lots more in Italy. So I think that's a good idea. We can do that here. And then what we'll do is we won't end this meeting. I'll just take you through the schedule for the symposium also, and for the next episode. So I'll just do that. So thank you very much, Kathy. Always a pleasure speaking to you. And definitely looking forward to the next episode. And we're going to continue the evolution of our mediator.
Well, thank you so much,